the list of city priorities slide to me is a direct, I mean, that's an ask to the voters, or mutt, we have to fund all those things. What should we cut? Let's just put that list on the ballot and go for the levy like as soon as possible. That's just me thinking out loud.
Our sales tax, our projections are down. We're about not even quite 3/4 of the way through the year, and we got time to catch up. But at the moment, our revenues are not tracking with projections when it comes to sales tax. Our expenses are higher due to inflation across the board.
That leaves us at a deficit of about $12 million. Again, this is just our starting point. You can also tell from the slide that our biggest expenditure is salaries and benefits at about $84 million.
We're going to have to make some significant cuts to expenses. Here's one of the things that really came clear to me as I got through the budget presentations with staff. I'll just use housing and homelessness as an example. We're funded there, but about $2.5 to $3 million of the funding that makes that program work is out of the state right-of-way fund right now, and that's guaranteed through June. We need to have an early conversation with our state delegation. We're going to do that here in the next month or so to put this on their radar. But long term, a lot of that funding is dependent upon the state. And if that goes away, that puts that burden back on us. And so you can imagine that $11.83 million budget gap that Joan had there, and you take away the state funding for housing and homeless programs, it grows to $14 million. So we're going to need to continue to rely on some state funding, or if we look at revenue options in the future, some of those choices may need to be to shore up some of our existing programs that are dependent on other sources, so that we don't have other cliffs that we continue to fall off of in terms of additional budget gaps.
I think you just made a great case for the levy and needing to go to the voters to ask for support. So I think urgency to me to get to a point where we can think about a $10 million loan to build a bunch of housing. Like, I think we could do 30 million and not notice it.
Relevant, important, convenient. This is ONN.
All right, I'm going to share with you tonight. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Hold on. I got to get it where I want it. There we go. Everybody see that okay? All right. Yes. As I said, we're here tonight with an early budget update. I just want to make a comment up front. This is very early in the process. You're going to see a number later on down the screen, which is our current balancing position. And I think you all know, have been doing this long enough to know there's where we start and where we get to. The budget condition that we're in right now and kind of what our balancing position is. There's a lot of work that still needs to go on with the finance team and me, and looking at revenues and expenses, and there's still a lot of work left to be done. But so this is just kind of give you an idea of where we are. As a reminder for those that are watching, and the finance committee has seen this many times, we work on our budget all year round. However, traditionally, the kind of June to December is the kind of the more traditional budget season. It's where we're actively working on our budget. Just last week is when all of the department directors presented their budgets to me and their needs to me. And I'm still working through all that with the budget review team, and I'll have a lot more to share with the finance committee later. But we use things like surveys, which we did one 2 years ago, that help inform our decisions around budget. We also, all of our decisions should be rooted in our comprehensive plan. It is the guide for our city. It's the guide for how our community wants to, where our community wants to see us focus our time and energies. We break that down, as the committee is aware, into focus areas that are seen here. And again, this is the guide as I work with the budget team and the council. We'll both work on our PPI cycle, and again, our comprehensive plan as our guide to help make decisions. When it comes to priorities, again, we did a survey in 2023. that said these are the highest priorities the community wants to see us focused on: housing, homelessness, climate change, economic development, and specifically within that, livability. And that's about the cost of living here, the cost of groceries, housing affordability. Those are the types of things that we're talked about there. Public safety and transportation, more specifically sidewalks and other pedestrian improvements. So what's new as we start into the 2025 budget balancing? First of all, when I look at 2024, revenues are down for 2024. Our sales tax, our projections are down. We're about not even quite 3/4 of the way through the year, and we got time to catch up. But at the moment, our revenues are not tracking with projections when it comes to sales tax. And Aaron and Joan can give me more specifics if you have that question. Our expenses are higher due to inflation across the board. I think this will be the third year in a row when we're approaching, I think, close to a 4% COLA. I say this all the time. It's awesome that we can continue to give our employees 4% COLAs, but over time that does impact our budget. And with inflation up, that impacts their cost of living and their costs. And so we need to match that. We aren't going to realize a lot of BLS revenues this year, but we are planning to start realizing revenues in 2025. So we think that there's about $4 million of potential revenue from BLS, where we think cost recovery is reasonable, about 40%. So you're going to see in the budget about $1.7 million in revenues for BLS as a starting point in year one, which is 2025. And then we'll see how it goes and make adjustments to that revenue in the out years. But I think we're going to be conservative in year one. We are transitioning to being self-insured from workers' comp. You've seen those numbers before. It is going to cost us more up front in the first year. We're also going to be operating in 2 different programs. We'll make the move October 1st, but we still are responsible for all the cases, workers' comp claims that are under our control at the moment. We are planning to implement the results of the compensation and pay equity study. I'll have a lot more to offer council later on that, but here's what I'll tell you. It's going to cost us about $2 million to implement that study in 2025, and I'm factoring that into the budget. It is my plan to bring you a budget for your consideration that includes recommendations from that study and paying our employees at the rate that they need. Part of that is also it's not just the class and comp. The pay equity piece is another piece that we're asking them to look at to make sure that we have parity across our each of our classes and comps, and to make sure that within each of those classes and comps, everyone's being paid at the rate they should be, and that's equitable across all of that. So I will be bringing you a recommendation around that. You just got a presentation around the public defense standard changes. That's gonna hit our budget for 2025, and it is $656,000 that I wasn't planning on. So I got to find a way to get that. As the committee knows, we're not planning any substantial revenue increases, at least at this moment. I've not had those conversations with council. They may not help us for 2025, depending on what council might want to do later. Maybe 2026, depending on decisions that are made. So I think you all are in the loop on that. So with that, I'm going to let Joan work you through some of the budget assumptions and kind of where our balancing position is, and then I'll pick it back up on the other side to talk about where we're going.
So the screen that you have on the slide that you have on your screen is a list of the assumptions that we put into the 2025 budget to start the balancing. We have the ones in the black and white is kind of our benefits. We don't have the final numbers on medical, dental, and vision as to what they're projecting the increase to be. They give us a range. This is the range that the number that we thought would come in most likely. Our unions, most of them have a relationship to CPI. Unfortunately, there are several that are still in negotiations. So AFSCME ends this year. IUOE, the Police Guild actually expired in 2023. The sergeants have expired, and Teamsters have expired. So we have put their estimate in at the highest that their current contract offers. That way we can ensure that we can cover their entire CBA.
One
You'll
quick
notice that
update to that is you'll notice police scaled at 9%. That's reflecting 2 years worth. So it's not 9% in 2025. It's our assumption that by the time we do catch up for 2 years, it'll hit us this year to the tune of about 9%. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
that was what I was going to say. Thank you, Jay. And then, as mentioned, we are looking to move to the state workers' compensation plan, and that we are going to be living in basically two plans. And so we have the rate that the state offers for different categories, the rate that we have currently for the city. And so therefore you can see that the increase is significant to our workers' comp benefit. We also have a list of our current claims as of 8/8, and we're using that as maybe a way to make some reductions based on our current claim history, so that we can help balance the budget.
Joan, may I ask a question before you move the next slide?
Of course.
The retirement contributions, the PERS and PSers, are both about 10%. Is that like a one-time catch-up? Is that just a big? How does that?
No, that's the current employer rate, our portion.
Oh, thank you. That's the rate, not a change.
Correct. That's a rate.
I'm good.
That's the rate.
I'm good.
Sorry.
Continue on.
You know, the way you just asked that, I can now see how you would have thought that was a increase. But no, that's the new rate that we got. And so that is actually baked into the budget. Okay. All right. And so this slide is our starting point, and it is just the general fund. But you can see that we have revenues estimated at 106 million. We have expenses estimated at 118. And so that leaves us at a deficit of about $12 million. Again, this is just our starting point. You can also tell from the slide that our biggest expenditure is salaries and benefits at about 84 million. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Jay.
Okay. So where are we going as we approach this balancing, and as I work with the departments and get ready for an update to the council in September? We're going to focus on priorities. We're going to keep our eyes to the priorities that are set by the council, that are set by the community out of the survey, and linked to the comprehensive plan. So as we make decisions, I said that earlier, but that's going to continue to be a decision we make. We're going to have to make some significant cuts to expenses. Here's one of the things that really came clear to me as I got through the budget presentations with staff. I'll just use housing and homelessness as an example. We're funded there, but about $2.5 to $3 million of the funding that makes that program work is out of the state right-of-way fund right now, and that's guaranteed through June. We need to have an early conversation with our state delegation. We're going to do that here in the next month or so to put this on their radar. But long term, a lot of that funding is dependent upon the state. And if that goes away, that puts that burden back on us. And so you can imagine that $11.83 million budget gap that Joan had there, and you take away the state funding for housing and homeless programs, it grows to $14 million. So we're going to need to continue to rely on some state funding, and or if we look at revenue options in the future, some of those choices may need to be to shore up some of our existing programs that are dependent on other sources, so that we don't have other cliffs that we continue to fall off of in terms of additional budget gaps. So we'll talk more about that, but that's just something that I know we're going to need. So when you see that, that tells me that things like levy lid lift or other revenue choices aren't going to fully close our gap. we're going to need to still continue to make some significant reductions in our general fund expenses. So that work is going to start this year. And I've signaled that to the department directors, and I'll have a host of things to share with you. We're already kind of down that path. We're going to continue to freeze some hiring right now, just to give me some opportunities to ask questions about the vacancies and things that we might be able to hold off on, to delay some hiring into the year. Again, none of those, I'll make no decisions that affect the delivery of our services. The delivery of our core services has to be tantamount to the decisions that we're making, and we've got to continue to deliver there. Beyond the programs I already know about, which is the Youth Council and Community Oversight, there is no capacity for new or expanded programs beyond the ones that I'm already aware of. And I've signaled that to the staff, and I know I've had some conversations with council along the way as well. We'll find a way to fund those. And with any amount of reductions, I may be bringing you some recommendations to delay some activities or projects for implementation, or pushing some schedules out based on the cuts we may need to make this year to make the budget balance. So again, I know that paints a bit of a scary picture right up front. We've already begun work on this. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of decisions to be made between now and the time the council adopts a budget in November. There's a lot more conversations for me to have with the finance committee. This is just kind of day one, so you can kind of track along with us as we go along. So I think all we have left is just to talk about the budget calendar and kind of where we're going from here. But before we do that, I'll just take a pause and see if there's questions on anything that Joan and I have shared up to this point.
Jim?
Yeah, not a question. Well, one question, I guess. I wanted to remind you that we talked about putting some sort of CPI on the MUT, so we can at least get it increasing based on costs. So think about that. And actually, the list of city priorities slide to me is a direct, I mean, that's an ask to the voters or MUT. We have to fund all those things. What should we cut? Let's just put that list on the ballot and go for the levy like as soon as possible. That's just me thinking out loud. But Jay, I'm curious, are you using any Southeast annexation scenario in 2025 or nothing at all? Because I think that does help our budget, because it helps us pay for the things, but with the state sales tax that we're currently doing for free.
Yeah, I'm assuming nothing. And the reason I'm assuming nothing right now, A, I'm being conservative. Okay. B, I don't know exactly how long it's going to take for us to negotiate interlocal. I've got to get this back in front of council, which I've been talking to Tim about, to get this back in front of you, to get this moving forward again. But let's say we get that in front of council by the end of the year, even the first part of next year, and you give the green light to start those negotiations.
It takes a year to do that.
I think it's going to take 9 months to a year to negotiate an ILA and get it through both parties. So I think it more aids us in 2026 than 2025.
Okay, that makes sense. I think you just made a great case for the levy and needing to go to the voters to ask for support. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're going on to budget timeline. Is that right, Jay?
Budget calendar. Yep.
Yep.
And I'll let Joan take that away too as well.
Okay. Sorry, Joan.
That's okay. So it looks like you're going to see us a lot more here in the next few months. Hope you don't get tired of looking at us. But we are going to come back on to the Finance Committee on the 16th for another update. And this should be with some recommendations of changes and that sort of thing. And we will present to the council the following day on the 17th. Preliminary budget presentation will be to council on October 8th. With the document being prepared and published by the end of October. We have a couple of meetings that we want to schedule for Finance Committee, and we would like that to be a special meeting. Just the timeline didn't work out, and so Aaron, I don't know if this has been brought up or mentioned to anybody, so surprise. I don't I don't know if we want to take the time to figure out if this is okay with everybody, but we are asking for a special meeting. And then we come back to City Council, the full council on the 15th. and then follow up again with special revenue and other operating in the end of October. And we have our public hearings and a couple more updates, and then adopting the budget on October 10th.
The 14th is Indigenous Peoples Day. Are we open?
I hope so.
We are
I
open.
hope we're not open, because that's what a holiday means.
Oh,
Yeah, that's not one of our city holidays.
It's a state and federal holiday.
Yeah, it's not one of a city. It's not a city recognized holiday at this point. It is on our list, but it is not at this point.
Can you make sure to include that when we see the budget numbers as what that will cost?
I can.
Okay, because I thought we'd already implemented. Thank you.
No, we started with Juneteenth, and we were kind of trying to roll kind of these kind of one at a time into the budget. That's another one that's just on the list. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thanks.
Joan, just heads up, I have another interjurisdictional meeting that will start at 5:30 that evening.
And I will be on an airplane, so I would not be available, but I could watch the recording afterwards.
Yeah, we have left that night at 5 also, Lisa.
We will move off that date for a variety of reasons. We'll get in touch with you all and find a date. I think what we really need is, I'd like some time between the October 8th council meeting and the October 15th meeting to get some time with you to just take in what we heard and to kind of continue to move this along.
Sounds good.
But I think that's it.
Oh. Okay, looks like Jay, Bernie, and Joan and Aaron are going to be working hard for the fall.
You told us we would be surprised by the number, but you never showed one.
11.8.
Okay.
Right.
11 point.
And again, I think we always start with a big number. There's a lot of work that the finance team has to do to vet all the budget entries that were put into the system by the departments. And Joan and her team usually find a few things that need adjustments. We're fairly conservative with revenues at this point in time. We'll likely make adjustments and make some recommendations. You can make adjustments to kind of where we are as a baseline for revenues at this point. We've got fund balance above policy that we could use to help balance, and that will enter the conversation, I'm sure. And then again, some level of reductions, probably in the $3 to $4 million range is what I'm estimating that we'll bring to you as a proposal.
Okay. I've noticed one thing that every year that I've been on city council, the distance between starting deficit to balance has increased every year. So I think that needs to also be pointed out, because we've got community members that think, oh, Jay is going to pull the rabbit out of the hat again. Well, every year it gets harder and harder. Now that rabbit's an elephant and it doesn't want to come out of the hat. Bad analogy, but I'm a veterinarian. And I have a cold. Okay. Based on what our agenda says, it's reports and updates. And my understanding is that the September meeting is going to be in person. Is that correct? I think this committee would like that, Aaron, if that's possible.
Yeah, we can look to see if we can find a room.
We will make it happen. I think that's your next budget conversation. I mean, I think that's a good opportunity to do that work in person.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I have a quick update item. So go ahead, finish your thought.
No, I was just winding things up.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to come back to our first agenda item, because there had been sort of a pseudo referral that came out of the last meeting with the finance managers around what could we do with those reserves around housing, around with that cash to make local housing investments. And so I just wondered, do we have that scheduled to get an update from Aaron on what we're thinking, as we're now at 135 million, with $1 million of that at Walmart?
I guess I've kind of been waiting for the meeting between Vancouver and us and everything to find out what their plan is. So we don't really have anything on the table yet, and I've I've lost track of where we are on getting together and having that conversation.
Got it. Yeah, I realize that. And just for the other members' benefit, so the housing authority and the finance team are talking because they're doing a project with this county treasurer in Clark County. But my read on that without the documents, Aaron, is it's just helping use the bonding capacity. Like they're actually bonding for that project. I don't see it as a drawdown of their cash flow.
Right. That's my take too, but I wasn't sure if they were also providing resources to a not-for-profit or something like that to do that work. But it does not sound to me like they are actually going to be, the bankers of the deal.
Right. That's my take too. So.
Okay.
I think so. One thing that Jay said that makes this a little bit urgent for me is the right of way is paying for capital, right? So is there a way to move the next capital project that is in line and borrow it from our reserves so that we can take that need out of the current operating? I don't know. It's not quite apples to apples, but it feels like there's some urgency to me to get to a point where we can think about a $10 million loan to build a bunch of housing. Like
Yeah.
I think we could do 30 million and not notice it.
Yeah, it would just have to be, we'd have to look at that and how would it get paid back?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I know. In a secure way. I'm not asking for that to be any kind of grant, but I actually think revenue might be higher too than what we're getting. I mean, especially as we see the interest rates go down, they'll.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Thank you.
No, good comments, Jim. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else for the good of the order?
I wanted to appreciate the year-to-date financial statements that are attached at the end of the packet. I really appreciate that detail. It's been some good reading for me. And I wanted to ask, hopefully this wasn't a big one-time ad hoc project. Hopefully this comes out of the new accounting system or parts of it.
We're going to keep them coming for you, Clark.
That's awesome, Owen. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Welcome back, Owen.
Okay. Well, you all, this was fun. I'm a finance geek, so I appreciate it, and I appreciate the staff's time. And I will see you guys at the next month, which is September 16th. Did I get that date right? Okay. Have a good night, and we'll see you all later.
Hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching.